So as Dr. Adner mentioned, I'm here to talk about technically two very different projects that we're doing at the ASN. One of them is around human-centered approaches to design approaches to artificial kidneys, and the other one is a very different sort of activity around verification, validation, testing for physiologic closed-loop control systems. And I'll spend a little bit of time trying to join those together because they're very different, but they're kind of connected in the theme of this meeting to push innovation forward. So I have nothing to disclose. So just to put everything in context here, Dr. Cedar was just up talking about the Kidney X and the prize competition that we're doing. And what we've learned, of course, Kidney X is that prize competitions are very important in identifying important innovations and promoting all the people that are doing good work around that, but they're not sufficient for actually delivering change to the people that we want to impact. And that's why all of these initiatives at the ASN fall under our big picture goal to accelerate innovation and expand patient choice. We have a number of initiatives that do that. Today I'm here speaking primarily on behalf of the Kidney Health Initiative. For those of you who who aren't familiar with our work, we deal with dealing with pre-competitive barriers to innovation. And we've done work in a number of different areas, from dialysis catheters and clinical trial design for them to more aspirational technology roadmaps for innovative approaches to kidney replacement therapy. You heard mention of our RRT roadmap earlier. If you're interested in the technology components of building an artificial kidney, that is a good resource for you. So just to put things in context more, today, why do we need to think about human-centered design? Why do we need to think about the people that we're trying to serve and how to incorporate their needs into product design? An illustration of the importance of this is thinking through of the product development cycle is home dialysis. So we talked about home dialysis a lot this morning, and just to set the stage a little bit, we know the quality of life benefits of home dialysis, but it is not adopted as highly as we would think. And there are a lot of reasons for this. But we think part of the reason is that the products themselves haven't fully accounted for the burdens that they're placing on the patients. And I think we heard a little bit about that this morning. And I think that speaks to the fact that it's very important to build products for the context that they'll actually be used in and for the use cases that they are intended for. I appreciate Eric's question earlier, really pushing for what is the actual use case for these products. And it doesn't matter how technologically innovative they are, if they don't actually meet a specific person in a specific context, we'll have a lot of trouble with adoption and sustained use. And that's part of what I want to get at today. Is we talk a lot about innovation at these conferences, which is very important. That is kind of how we give hope to people with kidney failure that their situation is going to change. But there's a lot more that's involved in actually delivering innovative products to people with kidney failure. That's why I think we need to zoom out a little bit and think about the product development cycle. And there are a lot of different parts to that. We spend a lot of time on the innovation, but we're going to talk a little bit today about identifying the right problem. And we're going to talk on the other side of innovation about implementation, about how we actually get to adoption and sustained use. And a way that we've come to think about that at the ASN that's been helpful is what's called the Biodesign Process. Now, this isn't novel at all, but it's, and talking to people who would work in innovation in the kidney space, this is a relatively new concept because it is one that emphasizes market pull rather than technology push. And what I mean by that is it spends a lot of time identifying the right problem to solve. When we started work on the human-centered design toolkit for kidney failure, we had a lot of trouble because we were starting off with the technology roadmap and thinking about, well, how do we think about specifications for an artificial kidney? What are the things that I must do? What are the clinical and technological benchmarks we should be aiming for? And we didn't get very far, and we realized it was because we didn't really know what questions we ought to be asking. And we didn't really know what sort of problems an artificial kidney ought to solve. And that's why we came back to this needs finding step. And this usually takes the longest amount of time and is most important to get right. Because if we end up solving the wrong problem, we might miss the market and not serve the patients that we want to serve, most importantly, but it's also going to waste a lot of time and money. And this is a very difficult step to get right. This is where we really think about the specific people we're trying to solve and where they're at, and what is the specific use case that our product is going to be deployed into. Now, the needs finding step interacts a lot with the second part of the biodesign process, the innovation part, in that the limits of technology and the limits of science help kind of bound the problems that we solve. And this is kind of a cyclical relationship where we might identify a problem, but then technology is not at the stage that needs to be to actually address that problem. So we kind of go back and refine the problem. And it goes back and forth like that until we've really kind of zeroed in on what we're trying to address. Now, the final part of the biodesign process is the implementation phase. And that's another place that I think we need to spend a lot of time on in meetings like this. And fortunately, we're going to be talking about value-based care later on this afternoon, which is really important. We're going to be talking about human factors tomorrow. And we often think of the FDA and CMS in this context, but it's more than that when we think about implementation. So we're really thinking about what are the non-technology considerations we need to factor into our product design that really support adoption and sustained use of a product. So that includes how do we manufacture at scale, what's the marketplace, how will maintenance be performed and consumables be evaluated and replaced. We need to think about what certifications and training that needs and what workforce is going to be used to actually do that. An interesting thought experiment is to think about if it takes, let's say, 10 years for many of the artificial kidney products that we're talking about here today to reach market. Let's assume that the nephrology workforce doesn't expand significantly in that time, which I think is a reasonable assumption. What's the workforce that's going to be maintaining your product? Who's going to be doing the little things like the technology checkups, reviewing all the alarms and notifications? Who's going to be doing the big things like the surgeries that need to be used to put an implantable product into you, or even just teaching somebody how to use a wearable product? That's the sort of thing that really kind of helps you think about what we've come to understand as the total product system that surrounds a device. So this isn't just a interesting abstract way of approaching product development. This is something that really flows from how the FDA thinks about product development and the system requirements and product requirements that are involved in actually getting something through regulatory clearance. And the part of this that I want to draw your attention to is the idea of design lock. And that is a very important milestone that is reached in every type of medical device development. It often costs hundreds of millions of dollars. It's when we are no longer making changes to our prototype, but we're ready to kind of actually enter into clinical trials. This is the point where we really kind of get into a little bit more of a mature stage and aren't really fiddling with any of design components. The encouraging thing, I think, for us as a relatively young, the artificial heart has been going on for a lot longer than that. If you read there's a New Yorker article that came out last year that's talking about an innovator in Australia who had dozens of prototypes running in his garage to test out his artificial heart. We aren't that close in artificial kidney development yet. So that tells me we have a lot of time to actually incorporate the patient's needs more comprehensively into our product design, and really think about how can we make sure we're building something that is going to be used by the people who need it most. So spend some time setting the stage here, and that's because the things I'm going to talk about today are very different. So let's go back to remember our biodesign framing. We have identifying the problems, innovating to find the solutions, and finally implementation. So Dr. Cedar mentioned our human-centered design toolkit for kidney failure, and that lives more on the identification side. We really intended this to be a tool to help innovators have more productive conversations with people with kidney failure. So the weird paradox that I've found when talking to patients and innovators is that patients still don't feel heard, and innovators believe that they are incorporating patients' preferences. So there's still a gap that we need to bridge. And I think it is around helping innovators better understand the burdens that people with kidney failure are under. And we're hoping that our toolkit kind of gives you a language to talk to them and really understand the burdens that they're under. So we put this together with a group called Sunrise Labs. They're a product development and engineering firm that has a lot of experience in the dialysis space. And they really helped us kind of conceptualize what it means to have an empathetic view of patients and turn that into design inputs that we can actually use to build a better artificial kidney. So that's kind of the three things that we really feel like are novel about this toolkit, or what I'm going to walk through today. Incorporating patient preferences into device development. We've done a lot of really good work here. Even just at Key, we talk a lot about patient preference surveys and patient-reported outcomes, but this is kind of a different way of looking at things. The first thing that we added that I think is helpful is the innovation scale. This is kind of a new way of thinking about patient preferences that is really based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The basic premise is that if we're claiming that our product meets the highest aspirations of people with kidney failure, we should also demonstrate how it meets all of these prerequisite needs around just kind of basic needs, basic quality of life issues. So if we're going to provide people total freedom to be able to live the life that we want to live, we also need to kind of make sure that they're not under a great burden from pills. We need to make sure they can actually afford the products that we're giving them. There's a lot of prerequisites that I think we need to think through as we think about what our product can actually do. The second thing that we did was really trying to help people think about the target market for their product. And going back again to Eric's question of like, can I use this in my hotel room? What is the specific patient that your innovation is trying to serve? And what are the specific use cases that they're facing? We really want to kind of help people think about market segmentation. So the personas that we developed aren't a complete exercise in market segmentation, but we would hope that they would help you think about what specific problems am I trying to solve? Because everybody's different. The needs of people with kidney failure are really different. We're talking to a patient advocate named Patrick Gee, who many of you may know, and he was just telling me just how the aspirations of somebody who's a grandfather that just wants to be able to interact with his grandkids and watch TV comfortably and just would be content with something sitting by his couch are very different from somebody who aspires to go back to running marathons. And those are very different devices. And I think we need to recognize that a device that seeks to serve both of those people is probably going to be very complex and very costly. And we could probably alleviate a lot of risks by just targeting it towards a specific patient population. So finally, we have our innovation scale, which is just a new way of thinking about patient preferences. We have our ambassadors, which are just tools to help you think about market segmentation. Finally, it helped to try to make this more tangible by giving design principles and metrics. So the design principles are different. Again, we're trying to pivot away from thinking about clinical benchmarks and technology development, and really kind of think about what is the emotional result of solving a problem for somebody with kidney failure, and that's what our design principles are. And then the metrics are something that's probably a little bit more familiar to an audience of scientists and engineers. We tried to be a little bit more tangible and give like real ways to measure how well your product is meeting the emotional goal or emotional aspiration of a person with kidney failure. So altogether, these are really tools that we hope that will be used by early stage startups and preclinical innovators developing artificial kidneys. We know this is a small group of people, and we really want to kind of help make sure that we're building products that will meet the needs of specific people with kidney failure. And there's a lot that we could still do now to make those designs even better. So now I'm going to pivot to a different sort of project, which is very technical one that I mentioned earlier. So now we're switching over to the implementation side and thinking about the regulatory process. So this falls on the implementation stage of the biodesign spectrum and covers a niche area of product design. It's verification, validation, testing for physiologic closed-loop systems in hemodialysis devices. So we released an RFI on this back in July, and we developed the questions that are in this RFI in collaboration with CDRH and in consultation with people in the community to validate that this was an important need. The core questions we're exploring revolve around how developers of hemodialysis machines choose what to measure and what methods are available to confirm the safety and efficacy of those measurements. So there are many other products that have addressed these issues, from ventilators to glucose pumps, and we need the kidney community to help us contextualize those learnings from those other products into the kidney space. So if you're interested in responding, there's still time. The response period for the RFI closes on Friday, September 1st, and can be found at kidneyhealthinitiative.org under the Collaborate tab. There's a button for RFIs. Additionally, we're hosting a public roundtable meeting on Wednesday, September 20th, to share responses and answer questions. If you'd like to attend this, you can reach out to me. So solving this issue could have a significant impact in the short term, and on a very narrowly focused pragmatic issue. So just in closing, the subjects I was asked on to speak about today seem very different on the surface, but they're joined together when we broaden our lens to think about what is necessary to commercialize a product. So invention and innovation alone are critical to deliver the promises that we made to people with kidney failure, but they have to be done within the context of product development. Identifying the right problems to solve will help guide our technology development towards the needs of the market, and thinking through implementation will ensure the adoption and sustained use of those innovative products. Remember that total product system concept I talked about earlier. So again, thanks to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share about Key's work. If you have any questions, feel free to find me or reach out. My contact info there.